in, Minnesota sports fans, to another edition of Vikings on SI here on the Bring Me the Sports YouTube channel. Jonathan Harrison here, joined by Will Ragatz. And Will, it was another dominating performance from the Vikings, 34-7 over the Houston Texans, once again for the second week in a row, really taking it to a presumed Super Bowl contender. And now the question has to be asked, are the Vikings contenders in the NFL at this point after 3 weeks and what we've seen from them so far?
Yeah, I mean, you said it. They really have taken it to two of the better teams in the league over the past couple of weeks, and they could have blown out the 49ers. They had a late field goal to make that a one-score game, and obviously, the Vikings had that fumble near the goal line that would have they would have gone up 20 if they had scored a touchdown there. This week, they actually do blow out a very good team in the Texans, and we came into this game thinking, maybe the Vikings can do it again, but this is going to be a tough challenge. It's probably going to be a close game. And it just wasn't. They just dominated on both sides of the ball. I mean, it was a continuation of what we've seen every week so far in this young season. Sam Darnold operating well and looking confident and poised and delivering the ball to a bunch of different people. And then Aaron Jones had a big game. And the defense, which we've talked so much about, just continues to impress week after week after week. I mean, Brock Purdy, and to do it against the 49ers is really impressive. And then to do it against CJ Stroud and the Texans is extremely impressive as well. So I don't think you can ignore this 3 week sample size and say anything other than right now the Vikings look like legitimate contenders and one of the best teams in the NFL, quite honestly.
I think one of, 4 or 5 undefeated teams left in the league, and I think the only one of those group you'd expect is the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Vikings are certainly one of those teams in there, and they have certainly put themselves in contention after 3 weeks. Another thing that can't go without notice, Sam Darnold, 4 touchdown passes, 0 picks yesterday, and it still looked like there was still some pressure, but he still handled it pretty dang well in front of him all afternoon. He had the one mishap, but other than that, I can't remember too many struggles for Sam Darnold yesterday against what is looking like a very good Texans defense this season.
Yeah, there was the one play where he looked a little Will Levis-y and
Yeah.
tried to underhand flip a ball to Aaron Jones, and it was a forward pass, but probably something Kevin O'Connell doesn't want him to do very often. And then there was a stretch where the Texans were really starting to get some pressure with Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter. Like the second quarter, the Vikings just punted 3 times, which was fine because the Texans also punted 3 times in that quarter. But yeah, for the most part, Darnold was really sharp and efficient, and only 17 completions, 28 attempts, 181 yards, but he throws for 4 touchdowns, which ties his career high. He's now thrown for 8 touchdowns in 3 weeks, which is more than he's ever had in a 3-week span going back to his Jets and Panthers days. And it leads the NFL through 3 weeks. He is atop the leaderboard in passing touchdowns. Nobody else even has 7. He's at 8 through 3 weeks. So it's just been really, really encouraging what the Vikings have gotten from their quarterback through 3 weeks. And obviously, today's big news was that his MRI on his knee came back and there was no structural damage. He's just got a bit of a knee bruise. So Vikings fans I think we're holding their breath a little bit on that one after what happened with JJ McCarthy, but sounds like Darnold will be good to go for week 4 against the Packers, which will be another really just a tough challenge against a good defense this time going on the road.
Just where we all expected to be after 3 weeks is holding our breath and waiting for news on a Sam Darnold injury that felt like it could have derailed the season. I don't think many people had that on their bingo cards 3 weeks into the season. And Sam Darnold performing as well as he has, and I know the conversation's come up a couple times over the past week or so, specifically after that 49ers game, in believing in Sam Darnold. Is it now time to actually just put full belief in this guy and that Kevin O'Connell just knows how to get the best out of his quarterbacks, it seems, and Sam Darnold's the latest quarterback to succeed under Kevin O'Connell, and we should just believe that this guy can lead this team to a very deep playoff run potentially?
Yeah, I think it's definitely time to believe in Darnold, and O'Connell's a huge part of that. His ability to get the most out of quarterbacks and use his own experience. They've also got Josh McCown on the staff. So it's like we've talked about. It's a really great environment for Darnold. Everything we've seen so far, it doesn't look fluky or unsustainable. I will say it's still been 3 weeks. The Vikings defense is playing out of their minds. The Vikings have not trailed very much at all this season. I think only for like a few minutes. They really just blew out the Giants. They were ahead for most of the game against the 49ers. They never trailed against the Texans, obviously. So I want to see a little more from Darnold because he has been pressured at times. He has, not as much this week, but in previous weeks, made a few decisions where you're like, all right, that was a little dangerous. So I think it's a different conversation to some degree if the Vikings get down and they have to really rely on Darnold to bring them back. That's harder to do than when you're controlling the game generally and you're leaning on Aaron Jones in the running game, and you're getting set up in short field position by your defense. So I would say, like, I wouldn't just suddenly anoint Darnold as a top 5 quarterback or top 10 quarterback or something like that, but he's certainly working his way into those kind of conversations with the way he's played. And if he can continue to do it week after week and be consistent and respond to adversity, because turnovers are going to happen and the Vikings are going to be trailing in some games and they're not going to blow everybody out every week suddenly. If he's able to keep doing that and playing well when the circumstances aren't quite as good, then yeah, we have to just start talking about Darnold as somebody who can take the Vikings to some pretty significant heights this season.
It was another, as you mentioned earlier, it was another impressive day for the Vikings defense, picking off C.J. Stroud twice, sacking him, I believe, 5 times on the day. It was an incredible performance from the Vikings defense, in which, as I said, 2 interceptions on C.J. Stroud, who came into the game throwing 5 in his entire career. It was an incredible display from the Vikings defense. Are we talking about a potential top 5, even higher maybe, defense this season from what we've seen so far, going up against 2 very good offenses in the 49ers and Texans and doing a really good job shutting them down? Another test this Sunday against the Packers. But are we talking about a potentially top 5, even higher defense from Brian Flores?
Yeah, I mean, right now we're talking about the best defense in the NFL. If
Yeah.
we're being honest, I think they're number one in DVOA, which is a stat I really like because it adjusts for opponents and a lot of different um, kind of context of the game. Um, there's other stats. I don't know that they're number one in various stats, but I think it's kind of fair to say that this has been the best defense in the NFL through 3 weeks. Just what they've been able to do, not only against the Giants, but the last 2 weeks against 2 really good offenses and 2 really good quarterbacks has just been extremely impressive. I've kind of run out of things to say about Brian Flores and this defense. I mean, they in every single game so far, they have had at least 5 sacks, exactly 2 takeaways, and they've held their opponents to 10 points per game. And the 49ers had 17 of those. But yeah, I mean, they're the first team since 2001 to have at least 5 sacks in each of the first 3 games of the season. I was looking it up. I don't think anybody's had a streak of 4, or at least certainly not 5 games in a row of at least 5 sacks and 2 takeaways at any point. And this team's done it each of the first 3 games of the season. It's just it's the complexity of the scheme that we've talked about with Flores and the disguise. I mean, the things that they do with the safeties and the corners and bringing 8 guys up on the line of scrimmage before the snap, only to drop certain guys into coverage, and just the confusion to do that against a guy like C.J. Stroud, who is one of the best quarterbacks in the league at reading those things and picking defenses apart. It's just incredibly impressive. I think you see the depth of this defense where any given week, like Van Ginkel had a huge game week 1. Last week, it was Blake Cashman. This week, Jonathan Grenard had 3 sacks. Those 3 guys were all acquired this offseason, and they've meshed so well with the Harrison Smith and Josh Metellus and the holdover pieces. And it's just up and down the line. I mean, they didn't have Ivan Pace Jr. or Dallas Turner this week, who are 2 of the better young players on a mostly experienced defense. So then they just bring in another veteran, Kamu Grugier-Hill, to play for Pace, and he gets an interception on the first official play from scrimmage of the game. So it's been unbelievably impressive what they've done so far. And even more so maybe than the Vikings offense, there's just no reason to think they can't keep doing this. They're not going to dominate every offense they face in a 17 game season, but They're so talented, so well coached, so deep, so experienced. Like, yeah, at this point, I would be frankly surprised if they don't finish as a top 5 defense in most metrics.
And if you're looking at the rest of their schedule, they're getting really the hardest part of their
They
schedule out of
just
the way right now.
they just played maybe the two best offenses, the Lions aside, that they'll play all year.
Yeah.
And the Packers belong in that conversation as well. But yeah, I mean, that's two of the toughest assignments on the schedule that they just held to 24 total points over the last 2 weeks. It's unbelievable. I mean, I think Brian Flores, the Vikings need to do whatever they can to find a way to keep him here for a long time. Give him the assistant head coach title or something, because that guy is just a wizard on the defensive side.
Yeah, absolutely is. He has put together a heck of a Vikings defense. We'll have more discussion about the Vikings coming up later this week. Plenty more, because 3-0, you can't not talk about them. I know the Twins are doing their own thing, which deserves some discussion as well, which we'll get to later on in the week right here on the channel. But there's plenty more on this bone to pick at with what the Vikings are doing and what the potential is for them throughout the season. Will, been good talking to you today. We'll talk to you right back here tomorrow.